Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to learn how can we create a data validation list or either a drop down. And the match function which we already learned in the previous video, we'll just have a small follow up. And the index function which will help us to identify the intersection of two different components. Let's say like manufacturing in the 2020th year is 120. How can we get the result by using an index function? And how can we use an average and a sum of the index? So that's what the functions like we're going to learn today. So firstly, we'll go to the data validation or a drop down. So here like we have a information already here like department wise and the year wise. What are the expenses? What is 2018, 19, 20 and 21 actuals? What is the 2022 budget? And what is the 2022 forecast? And the sum and average of each department and for each year. We have already the data set ready. And now this is the resultant data set like where we are going to work. Firstly, we want to give a drop down for department like this M8. I want to restrict this to all these departments that are available in B9 to B15. So for us to restrict that, we can give a data validation. Just go to the resultant cell like where we have the department to be filled in and select on data and then the data validation. So right now like it can take any value. So instead of any value, I want it to be restricted to a specific list. And the source of that list is between B8 to B15. So it's already phrased. So I'm just gonna press OK. So in case like if you want to give any custom error alerts, you can give it there. So instead of blocking, like you want to give them any like a warning message saying incorrect value. So it will just block completely and it can give an incorrect value, or it will just give a warning saying it's an incorrect value and it can allow you. So now I want to just block it and give this as the incorrect value as an error message. So I'm just going to press OK. Then I'm going to have a drop down of it. In a similar way, I want to give a drop down for the year as well. So let's say I'll do the same thing. I'll just go to the M9 and here I want the range from C8 to H8. So I'm just going to go here and then just say data validation. Instead of any value, I have to give it a list. And the same way I have to select the source, which is from like C8, just C8 to H8. I can just like manually type in over here C8 to H8 and I'm gonna just press as OK. So that's it, like there it gives us a drop down. So we'll pause for a minute here. So yeah, after giving the filters here, like I have a department like which will appear in like this way: R&D, sourcing, manufacturing, quality, marketing, accounts, human resources. And in the same way I have a drop down for the year as well. So now what we're gonna do is like, let's pick the R&D, which is the first one, and let's pick the year like which is 2018. So here we will have a small recollection of the match function which we had. So let's say in order for me to like, this is my entire array like B8 to H15. This is my total array of the data, like where I have the total data information. So let's say I want to find out like what is the number of the R&D department. So let's say I have to just do the match, and this is my lookup value, and my lookup array should be from B8 as I have to include the headers for the uses of the index function. And then I have to freeze the data set so that like I'm not giving any variable data, and the match type is like 0 and just enter. So it's gonna tell me R&D is the second, in the second row it is like when you look from the department as the first row. In the same way, like let's look for 2018 as well in the columns. In the same way, like the match and the 2018 and the information should be starting from like B8 to H8, and I have to freeze it. And then the match type is 0. So I'll just close it. So it's also going to tell me like 2018 is in second place. Let's say instead of 2018, I give it as 2021. So it's automatically going to change to 5. And now let's see like how can we get there. Let's say like we're talking about R&D and 2021. For R&D department in 2021, the cost is like 255. Now I want this 255 to be appearing in this cell. So like what can we do that? How can we do that is where the index function is going to like come in handy. So let's just like type the function over here. Equal to the index, and the array like where I have is like from B8 to H15. Freeze the panes, and then my row number is where the R&D department is. So I have to type a match function, my R&D department, and then I have to just select B8 to B15. I have to freeze the panes and I have to close that bracket so that I have given a row reference here. Now I have to give a column reference where the year of 2021 is appearing. So I have to open one more match function and then select 2021, and then from B8 to H8, and then freeze the panes. And again, the match function should be like approximate. So I'm just going to close the bracket of the match function, and I'm going to close the bracket of the index function, and I'm going to press enter. So it's going to tell me that in 2021 R&D has incurred like $255 million, thousand, whatever you would like to call it here. So let's instead of R&D, like I want to see some other function. Like I can just go to the drop down and I can say, okay, sourcing, I want to see sourcing in 2021 has incurred like 98. So instead of 2021 I want to see like some 2020 where it says like 95. So like these kind of things like which we can do. This is where the index function is gonna come in. So now I'm gonna read the syntax of the index function like once again for the benefit of the audience. So it's gonna be starting as like this, like equal to index and the whole array including the headers, like where it starts from B8 to H15. So this is my like total array of information, and then I have to give the row reference first, like in which row number the department is like currently situated, and then where the match function comes into picture, M8, like that's the sourcing, and I have to give B8 to B15, that is the lookup array, and the match type as 0, and then close the bracket. There ends the row reference, and now I have to go for the column reference where I'm gonna give M9, which is my year, and then B8 to H8 where the year referencing is there, that is the lookup array for year, and then with a 0 close the bracket so that you are looking for exactly for 2021, and then close the bracket for the index function. That's how the expense is gonna come. Like this is how the index comes in handy. This can be like majorly used like wherever you have like an intersection of values and you have to find an intersection for that specific thing, like that's where this comes in handy. So let's say like now we're gonna learn, like we are done with the data validation, the match and the index. Now we're gonna see like how can we use an average along with the index function. So let's say like there are two kind of things. So here we have two variables, one is department and the other is the year. So we are saying in 2020 sourcing has incurred like $95. So here I want to know like what is the average expense of that year, so that like I can see whether sourcing is below the average or above the average. And at the same point of time I want to know like what is the total expenses for that year. So technically when you see for the year 2020, we already have it calculated here, like 78 is the average and the total expense is 543. So instead of having these functions here, how can we directly get the data here itself using the index and the average functions? So that's what we're going to learn. So firstly I want to have an average. So I'm going to give it as average and then open the bracket. Then it's going to be an index function, index. And then here in the array, we have to just select the variables without the headers for the first array. So I'm going to select it only from C9 to H14. And then I'm going to freeze the panes. And now the array is done. And now for the row number. So I'm not looking for any specific department here. So I'm only looking for the year. So I'm not going to give any row number. And I'm just going to leave it blank and gonna directly go to the column number. So for the column number here, like I have to give a match again, and I'm looking for the year, like which is in 2020. So that's my lookup value. And now my lookup value I have given. So as I did not select any like the header in this one, so I have to just directly start from the C but not from the B. So I have to just go to my lookup array as C8 to H8, and I have to just gonna freeze the panes, so that like the formula wouldn't be moving around. Like whenever you move the formula, you copy paste the formula to the next cell. It's better to freeze the panes, like wherever you are gonna like copy the formula in the same row. So I'm gonna close the, like give it an exact match, close the bracket for the match function and close the bracket for the index function and close the bracket for the average function. So it's gonna tell me 78, like which is exactly coming from here. So that's how we can get the average expense for that year. As we are looking only for that year, we ignored the sourcing and we did not give any row referencing. So in the same way, the formula is going to be same even for the total function, equal to the sum, open the bracket, and then index again, open the bracket, and then the array is going to be the same, which is from C9 to H14, and then freeze the panes, and there isn't going to be any row reference. But for the column reference, we are gonna again match using the year, which is match 2020, and then again C8 to H8, freeze the panes, close the match function with an exact match of 0. So I close the bracket for the match function, close the bracket for the index function, close the bracket for the sum function. So that's what 543 is like, which is appearing over here. So let's say like in these two cases, we are freezing the year, like we are looking average expense for that year and the total expense for that year. When you see 2020 sourcing has spent 95, it's slightly above the average of that year. So let's say like now we want to see how much sourcing is spending every year on an average. So it's not the year is the freeze, year is the same field here, sourcing is the main field. So now it's going to be the same function again, equal to average, and open the bracket, and you have to give an index function now, index, and again open the bracket, and my array, which is going to be the same, the data set C9 to H15, freeze the panes, and now I have to give the row reference. So I have to give the match function for the row, match sourcing. In the same way, like I started from the 9th row in the array, so I have to start from the 9th row even in this array for the match function as well, and close the bracket with an exact match. And now I don't want any column referencing, so I have to just give a comma, and I have to like ignore it, so like nothing else has to be done over there, and then close the bracket for the index function and close the bracket for the average function. So 97. So let's say what's gonna tell me is like sourcing has spent on an average 97 for like for all the years put together. So that's what that's appearing in the J10. So in the same way, like we can just copy paste the same formula to the below, and instead of average I have to just type as sum, so that like it's gonna give me what is the sum over there, sum of the total sourcing cost for all the years put together. That is the 581. So this is it guys, like I mean this is where the index will come in handy, and at the same time you can use average and even the sum also along with the index. So please drop in your queries or any comments like where you have on match, index, or any other Excel functions. Thank you.